We know that the price of anything, as a KCM member, we've often talked about the price of anything is determined by supply and demand. How much supply of that item there is, and how many people want to buy that item. If it's very rare and a lot of people want to buy it, prices go up. If there's plenty of that item and not a lot of buyers, prices go down. That's not just with housing, that's with anything that we're selling. So now the rule, the guideline, let's call it a guideline, not a rule, is that if there's 1 to 5 months inventory in your market, that means there's not enough inventory to quench the thirst of the number of buyers in the market. So the seller's at an advantage and there will be appreciation. If we have 5 to 6 months, that's a normalized market. If there's 5 to 6 months inventory, that means prices are going to remain relatively stable. If you have more than 6 months, very few marketplaces have this right now, but if you had more than 6 months inventory in your market, then we know that there are not enough buyers out there to quench the thirst of the sellers who want to sell. So those sellers compete with each other. How? They need to lower the price. So you have to be very, very conscious in your individual markets, looking at your MLS data, how many months supply there are for the type of house that you have the listing on, or the type of house that you're about to get a listing on. Because that will determine what prices are moving forward. So let's take a look at the national market so you understand that. And then you could use your own MLSs to whittle that down to your region, that neighborhood, maybe even to that house. If we take a look, knowing that month supply determines prices, if we take a look at the month's inventory of homes for sale, as reported by NAR, we can see that right now, we're at that 5, we're just, poking at that 5-6 month level. Meaning what? Prices are going to begin to level off. Now you might say, Steve, we've had a shortage of inventory this year. There's some markets, you only had 1 or 2 months inventory. And I understand that. But if we look at year-over-year inventory levels, we can see, yes, at the beginning of the year, we're down almost 25%. We had a quarter less listings this January than January 2012. So what did that do? Drove up prices. Demand was consistent. Supply was real low. Again, if we go to supply and demand concept, that means prices go up. But every month since then, we're seeing that the inventory change from this year compared to last year is shrunk. Smaller and smaller and smaller. One little hiccup last month. But now this month, the month that NAR just reported on, shows there's actually an increase. There's more houses for sale right now than there were this time last year. What does that mean? Again, let's go to a basic supply and demand. If demand remains constant and supply goes up, prices level off or go down. No one here is suggesting that we're going to see, across the board, a decrease in prices. That's not going to take place. That might take place in individual markets. But across the board, in the 99% of the markets, that's not going to happen. But what we're also not going to see is that dramatic increase in prices we've been seeing. As a matter of fact, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that year-over-year change in prices, the year-over-year change in prices was skyrocketing since the middle of last year. But over the last several months, that's leveled off. That's exactly what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We're not seeing that skyrocketing prices right now. They're starting to level off. Now, they'll level off at a good number. But I think as demand in the winter does slow up a little bit, and inventory, I think this winter is going to increase, as we've seen in the last report, that prices are going to be really starting to, the increase in price is going to slow down rather dramatically. And I think that's already started. If we take a look at the month-over-month price changes based on Zillow, and I know there are some people out here that listen to this that think Zillow is the best thing that ever happened, and some people think Zillow is the worst thing that ever happened. Well, let's take a look at some data that they report on. Their sales price month over month, how much did the price in this country increase this month over last month? Is at 0%. As a matter of fact, Realtor.com's median list price, the price that people are listing at, is actually down. Not down a lot, 0.2%, but it's not skyrocketing, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's jump over to interest rates, because I want to make sure that even when we're talking to any one of our sellers, every single move-up buyer probably is taking a mortgage. But remember, because there's not been the same amount of equity built up over the last 10 years, many people, even moving down, need to take a mortgage out of another house. So interest rates have become vitally important. I want you to understand exactly what's taking place and what will take place over the next couple of months. Here are interest rates throughout 2013. And we know there's been a big fall off recently. The reason there was a big fall off recently is the fact that in September, the Fed said that they might consider tapering, reducing the number of bonds they buy, and the number of bonds they buy actually held interest rates at historic lows at the pace they were buying the bonds. So they were going to maybe not buy as many bonds. If you want to explain this to a homeowner, here's what we're saying, or a buyer, here's what we're saying. The government had a stimulus package. Part of that package is they were buying certain bonds to keep interest rates down. They're thinking about, now that the economy is doing better, to start limiting that stimulus package. Once they do that, once they pull that money out, interest rates will creep back up again. The word that's being used is taper, as I mentioned last month or 2 months ago. You have to know that word. That's a word that's being bounced around big time right now. Now, the last Fed meeting, just a couple of weeks before I'm recording this in October, they decided not yet, just like they did in September. Understand what that means, not yet. That means probably sometime soon. They're looking at different indicators in the economy to say, when is the time to pull the stimulus? And we're real close. Back in September, when everyone thought they were going to, it was a split decision because the economy just wasn't there yet. There was that fear that the government was going to get shut down, and it was. But now that we're getting past that and the economy is chugging along, many people believe that either at the end of this year or at the beginning of 2014, that they will start the tapering. They will start limiting the stimulus package, and interest rates will go up. Does the fact that they're tapering affect interest rates? Let's take a look. Here's a graph I put together the couple of weeks before the Fed announcement in September, and what happened to interest rates. They were skyrocketing. Just on the thought that the Fed might just turn around and lessen the stimulus package. Just on that thought, skyrocket started to accelerate. Throughout the summer, they went up a full percentage point. But here's just a movement in a couple of weeks before, and a movement a couple of weeks after that meeting when they decided they weren't going to do it yet. We saw that interest rates dove rather dramatically because everyone was relieved that they weren't going to pull that stimulus. But as we move forward, most people believe in the very near future, maybe December, that the Fed will decide, let's start tapering. Let's start pulling back because the economy is in good enough shape. Again, remember, it was a split decision in September. Half thought yes, half thought no, so they decided against it. If the economy shows any life between what impact will that have on your buyers and sellers? Well, the Mortgage Bankers Association believes rates will keep pushing upward, going well above 5%. As a matter of fact, they're not the only ones who believe that. Here is the list that we give you every single month of the 4 major projectors of interest rates moving forward. And all 4 of them believe that interest rates this time next year will be about a full percentage point higher than they were where they are now. As of this recording, interest rates at 4.1% according to Freddie Mac. So we can see right here, especially if we average them out, we're at about 5.2%, 5.1.5% a year from now. They're going to go up a full percentage point. And we've covered that in previous KCMs, what that means to a buyer's purchasing power. We've covered what that means to a buyer's checkbook. So when you're talking to your sellers that are making a move, if there's a mortgage involved in the move, They shouldn't wait. They're not going to get that much more money, and if they're looking to move up, the other house is going to go up also, if it does go up. But more importantly, the cost of that house, what's going to cost them if interest rates go up, is big.